Right now, if your heart is heavy, you don't have to be strong immediately. You don't have to force yourself to forget. You also don't have to pretend you're okay. A broken heart is not proof that you failed, but proof that you once loved very sincerely. Yet the deeper suffering often doesn't lie in the breakup itself, but in the loops in the mind, questions that replay endlessly. If only, why? Where did I go wrong? What if I had done things differently? From the perspective of Buddhism, the pain is real, but the extra pain we create ourselves can be let go. We suffer more because of clinging, because of craving, because we hold tightly to a story that has ended while our heart still refuses to close the page. Therefore, this video is not here to shout that you must cheer up, nor to judge you right or wrong. This video only wants to give you a moment of silence, a gentle path to come back. Right now, relax your shoulders, loosen your jaw, release the tightness in your chest. Breathe in slowly and exhale a little longer. You don't need to fix your whole life at once. You only need one small step from confusion to clarity, from contraction to softness, from grasping to letting go. If this video arrives at the moment you need it, stay until the end. And if you want to keep this peaceful space for weaker moments later, please subscribe to Zenlight Wisdom and hit the bell so you always have a place to return to. Like, share, subscribe, turn on notifications. There are pains in life that don't make us bleed. Leave no wounds on the skin. Don't show to others at a glance, but silently gnaw at the soul day after day, night after night. In every moment when we are alone, and the pain of a broken heart is such a pain. When a relationship ends, outsiders may say it's just a romance, that time will pass, that everyone has to go through a few breakups to grow up. But only the person who is in that pain truly understands the feeling of one's heart losing its support, of familiar things suddenly becoming strange, of messages going unanswered, of promises once spoken with all sincerity becoming only memories, and of someone who used to be your whole world becoming a very familiar stranger. A broken heart is not only losing a lover, but also losing a part of yourself, because in the days of loving you gave so much time, feelings, hopes, trust, and sometimes your sense of self-worth to another person. When that person leaves, you don't only hurt because they aren't there, but also because you don't know who you are without them beside you. There are nights so long that you lie awake, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, hearing your own breath feel heavy, hearing the ticking of time, making your heart feel empty. And in those moments, memories return on their own, without invitation or effort. A familiar scent, an old song, or a corner of the street you once walked together can unleash a sky of recollections, tightening your chest and making your breathing heavier than ever. Some people break in silence, still going to work, still laughing, still living as if nothing happened, while inside everything has shattered. Some let the pain show outwardly, crying more, speaking less, withdrawing, not wanting to engage with the world. Others try to fill the emptiness with new relationships, with work, with parties. But whichever way we choose, the pain of a broken heart is always there. It is merely hidden or exposed, faced directly or avoided. The Buddha taught that in this life, no suffering arises without a cause, and no suffering can last forever if we understand and transform its root. Yet when we are in the midst of pain, it is hard to see that because emotion clouds reason, and a wounded heart wants immediate soothing, wants a quick answer, wants to know why it was abandoned, why it wasn't good enough, why the other changed, and why such a beautiful love could end so painfully. A broken heart makes us doubt ourselves, doubt our worth, doubt love, and sometimes even doubt life. Some begin to blame themselves, thinking they were not pretty enough, not competent enough, not caring enough, not tolerant enough, not important enough to be kept. Others turn that blame toward the other person, labeling them cold, unkind, unfaithful, inconstant. But whether it's self-blame or blame of another, our mind remains unsettled, pulled between torturing thoughts, unanswered questions, and layered emotions that exhaust us. The Buddha did not deny human pain. He never said we are not allowed to hurt, to grieve, or to cry when we lose something. He gently pointed out that suffering does not lie in losing someone, but in how we cling to what has changed, in the mind's resistance to reality, and in the illusion that something in this life is forever ours. When in love, we often think the other person will stay with us for a long time, that this relationship will be different from others, that a little more effort, a little more sacrifice, a little more patience will make everything okay. These thoughts, though arising from sincere affection, can inadvertently become the rope that binds us and makes us suffer more when things don't go as hoped. A broken heart is not the end of life, but in that moment, many feel as if their whole world has collapsed, as if the future is murky, and as if no one understands, no one remains, no one is left to share the most intimate things in their heart. Many come to Buddhism while heartbroken, not because they want to become monks or nuns, but simply because they are exhausted by their own pain. They need a refuge, a gentle word, a deeper view to help them breathe more easily, live more slowly, and not be endlessly dragged by that pain. In the Buddha's teaching, suffering is an inseparable part of life, and heartbreak is just one of the many forms in which suffering appears. The important thing is not whether we suffer, but whether we understand that suffering, learn from it, and allow it to make us grow. People with broken hearts often feel weak, but in fact, daring to face one's own pain is already an expression of courage, because not everyone has the bravery to sit with wounded feelings, to listen to the inner voice, and to look at themselves honestly. The Buddha taught that no one can make us suffer if our mind does not allow it, and no one can take away our peace if we know how to return and take refuge in ourselves. But to understand that, we need time, practice, and a deep journey of self-reflection. If you are hearing these words while your heart still hurts, if you have just gone through a breakup, a failed love, or a relationship that went nowhere, allow yourself to pause a little. You don't have to understand everything right now. You don't have to force yourself to be strong, and you don't have to rush forward, because it is precisely in those moments of pause that we have the chance to see more clearly what is happening inside our minds. Buddhism is not here to erase your pain in an instant, but to help you understand it, embrace it with mindfulness, and gradually transform it into inner peace. Peace that doesn't depend on whether someone stays or leaves. And throughout this journey, you don't need to move fast, compare yourself to others, or prove anything. Each person has their own path to healing, and heartbreak, though painful, can become a door that brings you back to yourself if you listen, are patient, and are gentle with your wounded heart. When a relationship ends, what causes our suffering is not merely the departure of someone, but a much deeper sense of loss, as if a part of ourselves has been taken away. To understand why that pain is so great, we must look deeper into our own minds, instead of focusing only on the actions or decisions of the other. The Buddha taught that all suffering has causes, and if we only look at the surface, we may mistakenly think another person is the source of our suffering. But when we look deeper, we realize that the pain does not arise solely from the departure, but from attachment, from craving, and from the images we have painted in our minds about love, about the other person, and about the future we imagined would be. When in love, we often love not only the person in front of us, but also who we hope they will become. We love the dreams we project onto the relationship. We love the feeling of being needed, of being important, of being an indispensable part of someone's life. These things, very human as they are, become the roots of our pain when things no longer remain the same. We don't just lose a lover, we lose the habits we once shared, the plans we didn't get to realize, the sense of safety we invested in that person's presence. And deeper still, we lose the belief that we are loved in the way we desire. Many people ask themselves why they hurt so much, why, even after trying to understand, to accept, to let go, the heart still aches whenever they think of the ex. The answer lies in the fact that we often think this pain is caused by the other person, But in reality, most of it comes from our mind's resistance to the truth that things have changed. The Buddha calls this non-acceptance of impermanence, because deep down we want pleasant things to last. We want happiness to freeze in place. We want love to remain unchanged. But the nature of all phenomena is to arise and cease, to come and go, to unite and separate. When we don't want this to happen, when we cling to what is no longer present, that very clinging becomes the cause of suffering. In love, attachment is often disguised under beautiful names: sacrifice, devotion, wholeheartedness. But if we look deeply, we'll see that such sacrifices often arise from fear of loss, fear of abandonment, and the desire to hold the other person by any means. We fear that if we do not try hard enough, if we do not endure long enough, if we do not love deeply enough, the other will leave. That fear slowly robs us of inner freedom, turning love into a burden, making every action and every word of the other a potential wound. When they leave, all those hidden fears surface, and we hurt not only because we lost them, but because those fears no longer have anything to cling to. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from craving, from clinging, and in romantic love, craving often manifests clearly as the desire for the other to belong to us, the desire to be loved in the way we need, the desire for the relationship to follow the script we imagined. When reality does not match those desires, we feel disappointed, hurt, and betrayed, even when the other person has simply stopped walking the same path as us. We often think that if someone truly loved us, they would not leave. But Buddhism reminds us that human feelings are also subject to impermanence and conditions, and no one can guarantee that an emotion will last forever if the conditions that nourish it no longer exist. Another reason heartbreak becomes so deep is that we often equate our self-worth with whether we are loved. When the other is with us, we feel valuable, meaningful, placed in life. When they leave, we begin to doubt ourselves, to think we are not good enough or not deserving. That identification makes the pain much heavier. The Buddha taught that everything in life is non-self. There is no fixed, permanent self to cling to. Yet in love, we easily build a self based on the gaze, words, and recognition of another person. And when that recognition disappears, that constructed self collapses, bringing emptiness and disorientation. We also suffer because we place too many expectations on love, expecting the other to fully understand us, to make us happy, to heal old wounds, and to fill the voids in our hearts. When we hand over the responsibility for our happiness to someone else, we unintentionally give them the power to make us suffer. When they cannot or will not carry that responsibility anymore, we feel abandoned amid our own longing. Buddhism does not deny the value of love, but it reminds us that no one can be an absolute anchor for our happiness except our own wakefulness and understanding. So when we look back at the pain of heartbreak, we can begin to see that it speaks not only about the other person, but also a lot about ourselves, about how we loved, about our hidden longings, about unrecognized fears, and about the lack of a settled refuge within ourselves. This is not to blame ourselves, but to understand that if we do not see the root of suffering, we are likely to repeat the same kind of pain in other relationships. Different names, different circumstances, the same wounded feelings. The Buddha taught that understanding is the path to liberation, and when we begin to see why we hurt, that hurt no longer completely controls us, because we have created a space between ourselves and the emotion, a space to breathe, to observe, and not to be swept away unconsciously. If you hear this and recognize that many of the things just said reflect your own experience, remember that this does not mean you are wrong or weak. It means you are a person who knows how to love, and when we love without enough understanding, we will hurt. That is very natural. Buddhism does not ask you to end your emotions, to become cold or indifferent, but invites you to turn inward and look more deeply, to gradually learn how to love without causing yourself suffering. That is the path we will continue to walk together in the next parts, where pain is no longer the enemy, but becomes a doorway to deeper understanding and peace. Many people who break up ask themselves, I loved so truly, gave so much, sacrificed to the point of forgetting myself. Why is the outcome still sorrow, still parting, still an endless feeling of emptiness? That question can only be answered when we have the courage to honestly revisit our relationship, to distinguish between love and dependence, between love arising from inner fullness and love arising from lack. Two things that may look similar on the surface, but lead to very different outcomes inside the heart. When we love out of dependency, we often don't notice at first because the initial feeling is intense, passionate, seemingly true love. But if we observe carefully, we'll see that in that dependency many fears are working silently. Fear of losing the other, fear of abandonment, fear of no longer being noticed, fear of facing the emptiness within. Those fears make us cling to the relationship and to the person, not only because we love them, but because we need them to feel okay, full, and valuable. The Buddha taught that when we seek stability in the impermanent, that seeking already contains the seeds of suffering, because nothing impermanent can give us lasting security. In many relationships, we enter love not because we are already whole, but because we are lacking self-love, lacking recognition, lacking the feeling of being heard, lacking a deep connection with ourselves. We hope the other will fill all those gaps, give us the feeling of being loved, chosen, prioritized, and important. At the beginning, when the other reciprocates, when they care and show up, we feel very happy and very safe. But that safety does not come from within. It depends entirely on the behavior and feelings of another, and thus it is fragile. If the other changes slightly, texts less, shows less attention, has different priorities, we start to feel insecure, to speculate, to worry, and to hurt, even if nothing really significant has occurred. The Buddha calls that state attachment of craving, the clinging that arises from desire to hold, to possess, to be certain. In romantic relationships, craving often wears the beautiful garments of concern, worry, and sacrifice, making it hard to distinguish true love from subtle clinging. We may say, we do everything for the other person, but if we look deeply, we'll see we do many things out of our own fear. Fear that without those acts, we will lose them. That fear turns love into an unspoken exchange, where we give in hopes of being kept, being reciprocated, being assured. When we love from dependence, we also tend to lose the ability to be comfortably alone. We no longer feel at ease without the other. We feel empty, sad, and lost when facing ourselves. And so we cling tighter to the relationship, not because it brings happiness, but because we fear facing loneliness. But the Buddha taught that loneliness does not come from not having someone next to us. It comes from not being fully present with ourselves. If we cannot be alone without suffering, then no matter who is beside us, we will carry that loneliness into the relationship. Conversely, true love, in the spirit of Buddhism, does not arise from lack, but from inner fullness and understanding. When we know how to care for ourselves, listen to our feelings, and create inner stability, love becomes sharing rather than compensation. We love the other not because we need them to exist, but because we want to walk part of the path together, learning, growing, and nurturing what is good. In that love, there is still longing and attachment, but there is no panic when the other is not there, because the foundation of stability lies within us. A breakup becomes especially painful when the prior relationship was laden with dependency, because when the other leaves we lose, not only them, but also the consolation, validation, and sense of worth we had relied on, and we fall into a deep emptiness with nothing to cling to. That pain is not a sign that we loved wrongly, but a reminder that we loved when we were not yet whole, loved before we knew how to take refuge in ourselves, and loved without understanding what was happening in our own minds. The Buddha does not condemn this. Many people must walk this path. He invites us to learn from that pain, so that next time, if we love again, we will do so more mindfully. A clear sign of dependency in love is when our happiness rises and falls entirely with the moods and actions of the other. When they are joyful, we are joyful. When they are distant, we hurt. When they are near, we feel safe. When they are far, we are unsettled. In that state, we gradually lose control over our emotional life. Buddhism reminds us that no one can give us lasting happiness unless we learn to care for our own mind. And no one can take our happiness unless we hand that power to them. This does not mean we should close our hearts or become hard. It means learning to build the foundation of happiness on something firmer. When we look back at a past relationship in light of this understanding, we can begin to see more clearly that what made us hurt was not just the breakup, but that we had placed too much of our life's happiness on one relationship. When that relationship ends, our entire psychological structure collapses. Seeing this is not to blame oneself, but to understand, to feel compassion, and to slowly learn to build a steadier foundation for oneself. The Buddha taught that right understanding is the first step of transformation. And when we see the difference between loving and depending, between healthy attachment and painful clinging, the power of heartbreak begins to lose its hold over us. If you hear these words and realize that in your past relationship you loved wholeheartedly but brought along many fears, many longings, and a lot of clinging, be gentle with yourself. No one learns to love mindfully without passing through such pains. Heartbreak, in the light of Buddhism, is not a failure, but a profound lesson about how we relate to ourselves and others. If we stop, look deeply, and listen, from that very pain, we can learn to love differently, more gently, more freely, and with less self-inflicted suffering in the future. When a relationship ends, the natural human reflex is to look for a clear cause, a specific reason, and usually that reason is assigned to the one who left, because that is easier to understand, easier to accept, and easier to externalize our pain. But in the light of Buddhism, comings and goings operate by conditions, and not every departure is betrayal, not every ending is the fault of one person, and not everyone who leaves carries malice or cruelty. Many relationships break not because of a lack of love, but because conditions that once nourished the affection no longer exist. If we don't see this, we are likely to carry resentments, wounds, and self-told stories that continue to torture us long after the relationship has ended. The Buddha taught that nothing exists independently and permanently. All phenomena arise due to the convergence of many factors. Love is no exception. When two people meet, fall in love, and bond, many causes and conditions have come together. Life circumstances, the timing of the meeting, the resonance of their hearts, and the hidden longings within each. When one of those conditions changes, the relationship changes too. This does not necessarily mean the other person has become bad, betrayed you, or completely changed into a different person. It simply means they are no longer at the same point of convergence as you. People with broken hearts often hurt most from feelings of abandonment, replacement, or being taken lightly. These feelings make it easy to label the other with harsh tags, insensitive, unfaithful, or cruel, because it helps us rationalize our pain. But doing so locks us into a story full of resentment, where we become the victim and the other becomes the perpetrator. And in that story there is little chance for healing, because resentment causes the heart to contract and close off, losing the capacity to see more widely. Buddhism does not ask us to immediately forgive or accept, but invites us to temporarily put down hasty conclusions, to look more deeply into the nature of what happened. Some relationships end because the two people grow in different directions. One changes dreams, values, or visions of the future, and when the paths no longer run parallel, continuing together becomes very difficult, even when affection remains. Some relationships break because unresolved wounds in each person collide, exhausting both until they choose to let go to protect themselves. Some relationships end because they fulfilled a purpose at a certain time. The two met when they were needed by each other, but not necessarily when they could walk together long term. In such cases, departure is not betrayal, but the completion of a conditional meeting. The Buddha taught that understanding causality reduces suffering, because when we see that things arise from many converging factors, we no longer place all the responsibility or blame on one person, nor do we harshly blame ourselves. Heartbreak becomes painful when we believe that if we had acted differently, been better, more patient, or loved more, the other would not have left. But this belief often comes from the illusion that we can control everything in a relationship, while in reality, each person has their own journey, lessons, and limits that no one else can fully take on. When we view the one who leaves through the lens of causality, we can begin to see that they too are on their own path, with their own fears, desires, and limits, and their inability to stay does not necessarily mean we are not good enough. It simply means the relationship no longer had the conditions to nourish both of you in a healthy way. This does not erase the pain, but it softens it, makes it less sharp and less personal, because we no longer see the departure as a total denial of our worth, but as a natural transformation of life. Many people carry the image of their ex as someone who caused them pain, and each recollection stabs the heart again. But in the light of Buddhism, we are invited to see the other as a person learning their own lessons, just as we are learning ours. This does not mean we must excuse actions that hurt us, but it means we don't let those actions define the entirety of who that person was, nor do we let them define the total value of the relationship that once existed. Some people come into our lives to teach us how to love, some to teach us how to let go, and some to show us what is missing within us. When the lesson is complete, departure is often inevitable. The Buddha once taught that clinging to the past is one of the reasons people suffer for a long time, because the past cannot be changed, yet our minds keep returning to it, replaying images, words, and moments. Each time we do, we cause ourselves to suffer anew. When we label the one who left as the betrayer, we are more likely to revisit the past with rage, blame, and self-pity, and in that state, we cannot truly move on, because our mind remains stuck in the old place. Seeing through the lens of causality does not mean denying the pain. It means creating a broader view that allows the pain not to imprison us. When we understand that the one who left is not necessarily a betrayer, we can also start to let go of the haunting question of why they did it, because that question often has no complete answer, and even if it did, it can't soothe the hurt as we imagine. Buddhism does not teach us to find answers for everything, but to learn how to live peacefully with things that have no clear explanation, to accept that some things in life don't go our way, yet can still be held with understanding and compassion. If you carry much resentment toward your ex, many unanswered questions, and many unnamed emotions, allow yourself to pause here for a moment. Breathe deeply, and try to look at that relationship from a different angle, not to excuse anyone, but to free yourself from the burden of hatred. The Buddha taught that hatred cannot be resolved by hatred, but can only be resolved by understanding and compassion. And the first compassion we need to give is to ourselves, to the heart that once loved wholeheartedly, that once hoped so much, and that once suffered so deeply. When we begin to see the person who left, not as someone who stole our happiness, but as part of a completed set of conditions, we open a new door for ourselves, the door of acceptance, of gentle letting go, and of the possibility to move forward without carrying too much baggage from the past. From that point, the healing journey of the heartbroken truly begins, not by forgetting, but by deep understanding and widened perspective, so that pain is no longer a shackle, but becomes part of inner growth. When grieving a broken heart, many people treat pain as an enemy, to be avoided, extinguished, or forgotten as quickly as possible, because pain makes us exhausted, sleepless, indifferent to things that once brought joy, and desperate to escape that state by any means. We try to keep busy, laugh more, throw ourselves into work, seek new relationships, or tell ourselves to be strong, to forget, to move on. But the harder we try to drive pain away, the more it clings, deeper and more persistently. Because pain, like all emotions, does not vanish when denied. It only subsides temporarily and resurfaces more forcefully when we lack the strength to hold it. The Buddha taught that suffering is not something to be eradicated, but something to be understood. When we do not understand our pain, we react to it with fear, resistance, and flight, and those reactions create additional suffering. In heartbreak, the pain is rarely a single emotion. It is an interweaving of many layers. Sadness for the loss, anger at being hurt, fear of an uncertain future, regret for what was unfinished, and loneliness from feeling there is no one by your side. If we do not allow ourselves to recognize each of these feelings, we can easily be swept into a nameless emotional mess that further unsettles the mind. The pain of heartbreak is often amplified by habitual repetitive thinking, because our mind will not be still, but keeps returning to the past, analyzing every detail, every word, every action, wondering if things would have turned out differently had we acted otherwise. In that whirlpool, we suffer not only from what happened, but from imagined scenarios we construct in our heads. The Buddha calls this suffering created by the mind. The breakup itself happened once, but our mind can replay it hundreds or thousands of times, and with each replay the pain is renewed, sharpened, and harder to let go. When we regard pain as an enemy, we often dare not stay with it, dare not fully feel what is unfolding in our body and mind. We fear that if we let the pain arise, it will overwhelm us, we will lose control, and we will collapse completely. But Buddhist teachings tell us that emotions, however strong, are transient phenomena. They arise and pass, and if we learn to observe them with mindfulness, they lose absolute power over us. The important question is not whether pain appears, but whether we identify with it, whether we let it define who we are. Staying with pain does not mean wallowing in suffering. It means allowing ourselves to feel it fully, without judgment, without avoidance, and without self-blame, so that we can hear the message the pain brings. Very often, the pain of heartbreak does not only speak about the other person, but about unhealed parts inside us. Fears of abandonment from the past, emotional lacks from childhood, or expectations placed too highly on love. If we listen closely, that pain can become an honest teacher, pointing to places that need care and understanding. The Buddha taught that when an unpleasant emotion arises, we can return to the breath and to bodily sensations, to create a stable support that prevents us from being swept away by that emotion. In moments when pain surges strongly, simply acknowledging, "I am hurting, I am sad, I am empty," without trying to change or eliminate, the feeling is already an important step on the path of healing. When we can name the emotion, we create a gap between ourselves and the feeling, and in that gap, peace has a chance to appear. Many people fear being alone after a breakup, because being alone means facing one's own emotions. But if we do not learn to stay with our pain during those quiet moments, we will always try to fill the void from the outside, and that only compresses the pain instead of transforming it. Buddhism does not encourage isolation from the world, but it reminds us that the ability to be alone in peace is a crucial foundation for loving in a healthy way. If we cannot be with ourselves, we are likely to cling to others to escape our inner emptiness. Pain often makes us close our hearts, afraid to love again, fearing being hurt, and repeating the same kind of suffering. That reflex is natural, but if we see pain as an enemy, we easily build walls of defense so thick that we become closed off, distant, and incapable of deep connection. The Buddha taught that compassion is not only for others, but must first be offered to ourselves. Self-compassion in suffering means not forcing ourselves to be strong, not forcing ourselves to forget, and not comparing our healing process with others. When we begin to look at pain not as a mistake to be erased, but as part of the human experience, we can change our relationship with it. Instead of resisting, we learn to listen. Instead of running away, we learn to stay. Instead of blaming, we learn to care. This will not happen overnight, because the habit of avoidance is deeply embedded in our reactions to life. But each time we choose to remain with our feelings a little longer, not necessarily long, just long enough to breathe and recognize we are taking steady steps on the path of transformation. The Buddha taught that understanding arises from direct experience, not from theory, and the pain of heartbreak, however unpleasant, is a vivid, real experience, capable of helping us understand impermanence, attachment, and the nature of suffering more deeply. If we dare to enter that pain mindfully, not letting it drown us but not denying it either, we may find within it seeds of awakening, of compassion, and of a capacity to let go more lightly than we had before. If you are in a stage where the pain is still new, sharp, and very uncomfortable, remember, you don't need to do anything grand. You don't need to achieve peace immediately. You only need not turn your back on yourself, not inflict more pain through reproachful thoughts, and not hurry yourself to move on before you are ready. Pain is not the enemy, and when you stop fighting it, you may begin to realize that beneath the chaotic emotions, there is a deep part of you, quietly observing, breathing, and waiting to be heard, and from that place, true healing can begin. After the initial wobbling days of heartbreak, when the pain is no longer as intense as at the beginning, but still smolders somewhere inside, many people slip into a state of emptiness and fatigue. No energy left to cry, no energy to be angry, just a quiet bewilderment, as if standing in some nameless void, not knowing where to go or what awaits ahead, and unsure how to make sense of this pain. It is precisely in this stage, if we slow down and are honest with ourselves, that we may begin to see heartbreak not merely as something that happened to us, but as a deep reminder from life, inviting us to look back at ourselves, at how we loved, how we lived, and how we treated ourselves during that relationship. The Buddha taught that suffering does not come to punish, but to awaken. If we regard heartbreak only as bad luck, misfortune, or an injustice we had to bear, we miss a precious opportunity to know ourselves more clearly. Heartbreak often reveals what we neglected in love. Some realize they elevated the other person so high that they became small, pushing their own needs, desires, and feelings aside. When the relationship ends, they hurt, not only because they lost the person, but because they see they had lived far from themselves for a long time. Some people, in love, give up a lot: time with friends, family, personal dreams, even core values, all to keep the relationship stable. In the moment, they may comfort themselves that it was sacrifice for love, for the beloved. But in heartbreak, those sacrifices become starkly visible, and they realize how long they have neglected themselves. The pain then is not only about the breakup, but about losing oneself. And that pain strongly reminds us that no relationship is worth abandoning who we are. The Buddha taught that mindfulness is the ability to clearly see what is happening in body and mind in the present moment. When we apply mindfulness to the experience of heartbreak, we can begin to notice familiar patterns in how we love, how we react, and how we seek happiness. Some discover they always love in the same way, always choose people who aren't available, always hope their love will change the other person, and always end up disappointed. This heartbreak is just a repetition of an old loop. Recognizing this is not for self-blame, but to understand that if we do not stop and learn, the loop will continue with different names and circumstances, but the pain will feel the same. Heartbreak also exposes our relationship with ourselves. When the other person is no longer there to lean on, to share with, to comfort us, we must face our inner life more nakedly. Some realize they don't know what to do alone, how to care for their emotions, how to soothe themselves in sadness, or how to create joy from simple things. This confusion signals that the most important relationship they neglected was the relationship with themselves. The Buddha taught that no one can be a firm refuge for us if we do not know how to take refuge in ourselves. And heartbreak, though painful, can become an opportunity to learn to befriend ourselves. When we have the courage to look back at the past relationship, not to judge right or wrong, but to understand more deeply what happened in our hearts, we can begin to perceive hidden longings we never named before. The desire to be acknowledged, to be prioritized, to be proven important. When those needs go unmet, the hurt runs deep. Heartbreak becomes a mirror, reflecting honestly what we sought in love. And if we are awake enough, we might ask whether those needs can be nurtured from within, rather than relied upon from another person. The Buddha taught that self-knowledge is the foundation of freedom, and heartbreak, when viewed with mindful clarity, can teach us much about ourselves, our limits, weaknesses, and places that need care. Some people only realize after a breakup that they loved to avoid inner emptiness, loved to avoid facing loneliness. When the relationship ends, that loneliness rises stronger than ever. Recognizing this is not failure, but an important step in inner maturation, from which we can begin to learn how to be alone without suffering, how to fill ourselves with understanding, mindfulness, and compassion. Heartbreak also asks us to reconsider the boundaries we set in relationships. Some realize they gave so much that clear boundaries ceased to exist, accepting behaviors that hurt them simply for fear of losing the other person. When the relationship ends, they feel the pain of separation and the pain of having failed to protect themselves. The Buddha taught that true love always goes hand in hand with wisdom, the wisdom to know what is healthy and what is not, when to open and when to stop, so as not to make oneself suffer. If we view heartbreak as a reminder, we can begin to ask ourselves important questions, not to find fault, but to understand, what do I truly need in a relationship? Am I loving mindfully? Am I building my happiness on a stable foundation? These questions don't need immediate answers. Sometimes just asking and letting them settle in the heart begins their work, gradually shifting how we see love and ourselves. The Buddha taught that no experience is meaningless if we learn from it, and heartbreak, however painful, is no exception. When we stop seeing it as an end and begin to see it as an invitation to return, an opportunity to know ourselves more deeply, to be kinder to ourselves, and to live more mindfully, that pain can gradually transform into maturity, compassion, and a firmer foundation for future relationships. This journey is neither easy nor quick, but every step taken with understanding and mindfulness has value, and from those steps, we can begin building a sturdier inner life, where love is not a place to lose ourselves, but a place to grow together in understanding and freedom. In the healing journey of the heartbroken, perhaps the concept that confuses and scares people most is the phrase, letting go, because many understand letting go as having to forget entirely, to erase memories, to never think of the other person again. If memories remain, if pain remains, if feelings are still stirred, they believe they haven't let go, that they are weak, stuck in the past. But in the light of the Buddha's teaching, letting go does not mean erasing memories or denying what once happened. It means learning to put down, clinging, to release the desire that things be different from how they are, and to stop identifying ourselves with what has been lost. The Buddha taught that suffering does not lie in whether we have memories, but in how we hold those memories. Memories in themselves are just images and past feelings, but when we cling to them and continually return to them, seeking something that no longer exists, we inflict pain on ourselves again and again. Letting go, in this sense, is not forcing forgetfulness, but allowing memories to exist as they are, without letting them pull our minds away from the present or define our entire emotional life. Many try to let go by willpower, telling themselves they must be strong, must forget, must be decisive. But the harder they force it, the more exhausted and defeated they feel, because the mind does not operate by command, but by habit, and the habit of clinging cultivated during love cannot vanish after a few stern affirmations. Buddhism does not teach us to use violence against our minds, but to use understanding and patience. Only when we understand why we cling can we let go naturally, without forcing or punishing ourselves. Letting go also does not mean denying the good things that once were, not declaring the relationship entirely wrong or meaningless. It means seeing it as a part of life that was complete in its own set of conditions. Some relationships do not last forever, but still held value during the time they existed. Letting go here is to allow ourselves to appreciate what passed without trying to keep it in the present. When we can remember without pain, remember without resentment, remember without self-blame, it is a sign we are learning to let go properly. The Buddha taught that clinging often comes with the illusion of control. We believe that if we hold on tighter, try harder, or sacrifice more, everything will go our way. When reality does not meet that illusion, we suffer. Letting go is therefore also releasing the need to control, releasing the desire that the other person must change, return, understand us, or give us a different ending. When we stop demanding that reality be different, we begin to live with what is, and the mind becomes lighter. One reason letting go is difficult is our fear that by letting go, we will lose all connection to the other person, lose part of our identity, and lose the meaning of the time lived together. But the Dharma reminds us that memories do not vanish when we let go of clinging. They simply no longer dominate us. Like a book that has been read, we still remember the content and cherish the story, but we don't need to reread it daily to chase old feelings. Letting go allows that story to hold its rightful place in our life, not pushed out, but not occupying the whole inner space either. Letting go is not a one-time act, but a process. Sometimes we think we have let go and feel lighter, yet an unexpected memory, a dream, a song, or news about the ex pulls us back, and we feel we've returned to the starting line. In the Buddha's perspective, this is not failure, but part of the natural process of letting go. The mind does not move in a straight line, but in widening circles. Each return, if accompanied by a bit more understanding and mindfulness, means the circle is broader and the pain lighter. The Buddha taught that mindfulness is the key to letting go naturally. When we are fully present with the moment, we are not drawn deep into past or future. When a memory of the ex arises, instead of chasing it or suppressing it, we can simply acknowledge that a memory is present, that a sensation has arisen in the body, and that it will pass like any other phenomenon. Simply recognizing this, without adding a story or judgment, prevents us from feeding the attachment, and that is the practice of letting go in small moments. Letting go also relates deeply to self-compassion. If we blame ourselves for not having let go, for still remembering, for still hurting, we add another layer of suffering. The Dharma reminds us that every process needs time, and the heart needs care, listening, and patient treatment, not force or comparison. When we treat ourselves gently, letting go comes more naturally, like a flower that blooms when it has enough sun and water, not when its petals are pulled. Letting go is not turning our back on love, but learning to love without making ourselves suffer, loving without clinging, loving while keeping inner freedom. When we understand this, we can begin to let go not only of the old partner, but also of unrealistic expectations, idealized images, and the stories we tell ourselves that cause pain. Letting go is setting down burdens we no longer need, so that hands and heart may be lighter, and the mind have space for peace and clarity. If you are in a phase where letting go is still very hard, with many tug-of-wars inside, remember, you do not have to release everything at once. Let go little by little. Let go of a thought, of a desire, of an unanswered question. Each small release is a step in the right direction. The Buddha taught that there is no path to well-being other than the path of daily practice, breath by breath, and letting go in its deepest sense is a continuous practice of understanding and compassion toward oneself. In the journey beyond heartbreak, there is a stage even harder than letting go, learning to forgive. When hurt, our natural reflex is to protect ourselves with blame, anger, and by tightly holding on to the narrative that we are the wounded party and the other is the cause. Blame can initially bring a sense of justice that our pain has reason, that we are not at fault, and that the other should be responsible. But over time, blame becomes a burden, a rope that binds us and prevents us from moving on. Every recall tightens the heart, every mention of their name stirs emotions, and our mind never has a moment's rest. The Buddha taught that holding on to hatred is like holding a hot coal, intending to throw it at someone else. The first one burned is always ourselves. In Heartbreak, many unconsciously clutch that coal too long until they forget they have the right to put it down. Forgiveness, in the Dharma's view, is not an act that benefits the other or a way of saying what happened was right or acceptable. It is a profound decision to stop continuing to make ourselves suffer for what has passed. Many fear forgiveness, thinking it means denying their own pain, accepting unfair treatment, or allowing the other to keep hurting them. But the Buddha reminds us that forgiveness is not weakness, it is a sign of wisdom. Only when we are strong enough not to be bound by hatred are we truly free. Forgiveness is not forgetting or pretending nothing happened. It is remembering without being controlled by anger, speaking of the other without wanting retribution, and looking at the past without wishing it had been different. In Heartbreak, blame often comes with many unanswerable questions. Why did they do it? How could they change so quickly? Why didn't they appreciate what I gave? If these questions are not held with mindfulness, they become needles continuously poking the heart, preventing us from resting in the present. The Buddha does not encourage seeking answers to every question, because some things in life have no complete explanation, and clinging to questions can be another way of nurturing resentment. Forgiveness here means allowing ourselves to release the need to understand everything, to be certain, or to have a perfect conclusion to the story. Forgiveness is also shaped by how we view the other person. If we see them only through the lens of our hurt, they become the destroyer of our happiness. If we see more deeply through the lens of interdependent conditions, we may begin to see that they are also a human being with limits, fears, and unhealed wounds. Very likely their actions did not arise from malice, but from ignorance, confusion, or their own inability to cope. This does not justify harm, but it helps us see that resentment does not clarify the truth. It only weighs down our hearts. The Buddha taught that compassion is not soft sentimentality, but the capacity to see another's suffering, even when they have hurt us. Practicing compassion in Heartbreak does not require us to immediately cherish the other person. It is enough to stop feeding the image of them as an enemy in our minds. When we stop replaying the narrative of our victimhood, when we stop recreating painful moments to prove our righteousness, we begin to open a new space in the heart where peace can grow. Forgiveness is a process, not a decision made in a single moment. There will be days when we feel we have let go and feel lighter, and then an unexpected memory or an old phrase triggers anger again. In such times, many chastise themselves for not being mature or awake enough. But the Dharma reminds us that habits take time to transform. Forgiveness is not the absence of feeling, but the refusal to let those feelings control our actions and inner life. A very practical way to practice forgiveness is to begin by forgiving ourselves. In Heartbreak, we often blame ourselves harshly for trusting wrongly, for loving the wrong person, for giving too much, or for not being good enough to keep them. This self-reproach silently gnaws at self-worth and makes it hard to move on gently. The Buddha taught that self-blame does not lead to greater understanding, but only increases suffering. When we can look at ourselves with compassion and recognize we did the best we could with the understanding we had then, we lay a foundation for deeper forgiveness, both for ourselves and for the other. Forgiveness is not a gift we bestow upon the departed. It is a gift we give ourselves. For as resentment fades, our mind gains space for other emotions, for peace, for small joys, and for the capacity to reconnect with life. The Buddha taught that the mind is like soil. If we continuously sow seeds of hatred, the soil becomes barren and heavy. If we begin to plant seeds of understanding and compassion, it will grow fertile and produce wholesome fruits. If you are at a stage where forgiveness seems distant, where inner tug-of-wars remain, remember, you do not have to force yourself to forgive now. Just don't intentionally continue to feed resentment. Each time anger rises, notice it, breathe with it, and do not let it govern your words or actions. Each such moment is an important step on the path to liberation. Liberation, in the Buddha's light, is not escaping life, but not being bound by the emotions that cause our suffering. When we begin to forgive, even a little, we may sense a subtle change in the mind, a nameless lightness, as if a burden has been set down. In the space that opens, we can hear the inner voice of peace, clarity, and the possibility to move forward without carrying excessive luggage from the past. From there, the healing journey of the heartbroken enters a new phase, where the past no longer binds us so tightly, and we can live more fully in the present, with a heart that has been hurt, yet learned softness and freedom. After going through the paths of letting go and forgiveness, many still notice that although the intellect understands, the resentment has lessened, and the feelings have calmed, the heart still remembers. And memories of the ex still return naturally and unexpectedly. A quiet afternoon, a familiar song, or a lonely moment can bring old images back, leaving us perplexed and asking whether we have truly moved on. In the Buddha's view, remembering is not a failure of practice or healing, it is a natural part of the mind, for memories are traces of experiences that once mattered and cannot be erased by understanding or willpower alone. The Buddha taught that the mind is like a river with many currents. Some have quieted, others still flow. The memory of love is one such current. If we do not stir it or pour energy into it, over time it will settle. The issue is not memory's appearance, but how we react when it arises. If each recollection drags in old stories, judgments, and regrets, we continue fueling the current, keeping it alive and sharp. Many make themselves suffer by comparing the present with the past, comparing current feelings with days of love, comparing a new person with the old, and in such comparisons, the past is often idealized, made more beautiful, deeper, and more complete than it really was. The Buddha taught that the mind tends to cling to what is pleasant, and when the present is not yet peaceful, the mind returns to the past to seek familiarity. If we do not recognize this tendency, we easily get carried away and trapped in images that no longer reflect the reality of the past relationship. Living with memories in a healthy way does not mean constantly replaying, ruminating, or analyzing them. It means allowing memories to arise as natural phenomena and letting them pass without clinging. When an old image appears, we can simply acknowledge that we are remembering. Notice the bodily sensation that arises, a tightening in the chest, a heaviness in the stomach, a long breath. And by noticing without adding a story, conclusion, or judgment, we prevent the memory from becoming the source of new suffering. The Buddha calls this mindfulness, clear seeing without attachment. Sometimes memories carry not only sorrow but warmth, gratitude, and beautiful moments. And many fear that allowing such feelings will make them return to square one and prevent moving on. But the Dharma does not demand denying positive emotions linked to memory. It only reminds us not to cling to them. Clinging to pleasant feelings is also a form of attachment, and any attachment leads to suffering when its object changes. When we can recall beauty with gratitude, without longing for its return or expecting the other person to come back, the memory stops being a burden and becomes a natural part of life's journey. The Buddha taught that impermanence applies not only to painful things, but also to happiness. Understanding this helps us not fear memory's appearance, for we know the emotions accompanying memory will change, arise, and pass, like all phenomena. When we do not resist, flee, or cling, memories gradually lose their power, like a ripple fading on a lake when the wind dies down. Many, when heartbroken, try to fill the void with new relationships, not because they are ready to love again, but because they fear facing their memories and emotions. This usually complicates memories because they have not been properly faced and transformed. The Dharma reminds us there is no shortcut to healing. If we do not spend time living with memories mindfully, we will carry unresolved echoes into future relationships, making it easy to repeat the same pattern of pain. When we learn to live with memories without causing ourselves further suffering, we also learn to return more deeply to the present. Each time we notice being drawn to the past, we can gently bring the mind back to what is happening now: the breath, the steps, the sounds around us, the sensations of the body sitting and breathing. The Buddha taught that the present is the only place where life truly exists, and when we can rest in the present, memories lose their former influence because they are no longer fueled. Living with memory also helps us understand ourselves more clearly. For what we remember, how we remember, and the feelings attached to memories reflect our values, longings, and inner lacks. When we look at memory with mindful eyes, we can learn much about how we love, how we cling, and how we seek happiness. And from that understanding, we can adjust our way of living in the present so as not to unconsciously repeat old patterns. The Buddha taught that suffering does not lie in the memory itself, but in attachment to the memory. And when we can remember without clinging, feel without being swept away, and see without judgment, we gradually free ourselves from the bonds of the past. This does not make us insensitive. On the contrary, it makes us softer, deeper, and more fully present to what is happening in our present life. If you are in a stage where memories still appear often and still make your heart falter, remember, this does not mean you are on the wrong path. It simply means your heart has loved deeply, and what mattered does not disappear in an instant. Continue to practice presence. Return to the breath whenever a memory appears. Treat yourself with patience and compassion. Each time you do not run from the memory, do not feed it, and do not make yourself suffer more. You are taking a firm step on the path to inner freedom. After passing through the stages of letting go, forgiveness, and learning to live with memory, many heartbroken people confront a clear but frightening reality. Being alone, no longer receiving familiar messages each day, no one to share small things with, no sense of someone waiting for them at the end of the day. In that void, loneliness presents itself sharply and truly, leaving us confused and unsure what to do with ourselves. Many confuse loneliness with solitude, thinking being alone equals lack, emptiness, sadness. But in the Buddha's light, being alone can become a precious space if we learn to be present with ourselves without judgment, without escape, and without trying to fill it with external things. The Buddha taught that the deep cause of loneliness is not the absence of others, but our inability to stay with ourselves in steadiness. If we cannot befriend our own mind and listen to what is happening within, we will feel alienated even in a crowd. From this view, heartbreak not only takes away a relationship, but offers a rare opportunity to return and rebuild the relationship with ourselves. A foundational relationship many have neglected while loving another. When starting to be alone after a breakup, many previously suppressed emotions arise: sadness, emptiness, fear of the future, and questions about self-worth. If we are not used to facing such feelings, we easily escape into work, social media, transient relationships, or habits that temporarily distract the mind from discomfort. But the Dharma reminds us that escape does not make emotions disappear. It only pushes them deeper, and when we can no longer avoid them, they return more forcefully. Learning to be alone is not learning to endure loneliness, but learning to be fully present with what is: the breathing body, the feeling mind, and life unfolding in ordinary moments. The Buddha taught that mindfulness is the ability to return to the present, and when we are alone with mindfulness, we no longer feel abandoned because we recognize that we are still here, alive, breathing, capable of caring for ourselves. That presence, though simple, has great healing power because it reminds us we are not entirely dependent on others for our sense of existence. Many people in love are used to directing all attention outward, attending to the partner's emotions, reacting to the smallest changes in the relationship. When the relationship ends, they feel lost because they don't know where to place their attention. Learning to be alone is learning to turn that attention inward, to listen to your feelings, notice your needs, and gradually learn to meet healthy needs yourself rather than waiting for someone else to do so. The Buddha taught that self-reliance is a pillar of inner freedom, and only when we can rely on ourselves can we enter a new relationship without carrying excessive expectations and dependence. Being alone also helps us see our psychological habits more clearly. Without another person to distract us, we can notice repetitive thoughts, familiar reactions, and subtle fears that drive our behavior. The Dharma calls this an opportunity for practice, not practice of ritual, but practice of clear seeing, because only when we see clearly can we change. From this perspective, heartbreak is not merely a loss, but an important phase for maturation of consciousness. Learning to be alone helps us reset our rhythms. Small things like how we begin a day, how we eat a meal, how we walk, how we rest. Doing these things with attention, without hurry or comparison, we begin to feel simple joys we may have missed before. The Buddha taught that happiness is not a special state that appears only when everything is perfect, but the capacity to appreciate what is present, and solitude is an opportunity to cultivate that capacity. There will still be moments when loneliness arises and makes the heart sink. In those moments, it is important not to blame ourselves, not to tell ourselves we are weak or not strong enough, but simply to acknowledge that loneliness is present and that it is a natural part of being human, especially after a relational loss. The Buddha taught that no emotion lasts forever. When we do not resist or judge, it will change and transform on its own, like clouds passing in the sky. Learning to be alone also helps us rebuild relationships with the world around us. When we are no longer overly focused on one person, we can broaden our concern to many directions, reconnect with friends and family, with nature, and with meaningful activities, not to fill a void, but to enrich our inner life. Buddhism does not encourage isolation but healthy connection, where we can be alone without feeling lonely and be with others without dependency. As we get used to being alone, we can begin to sense a subtle freedom. Freedom from needing to always please others, from the fear of being abandoned, and from emotional dependence on external factors. The Buddha taught that inner freedom does not come from controlling life, but from not being swept away by its fluctuations, and the ability to be peacefully alone is a clear expression of that freedom. If you are in a phase where being alone is still very difficult, and the gaps weigh heavily on your heart, remember, this is not a sign you are on the wrong path, but a sign you are learning an important lesson: how to be present with yourself. Go slowly, be patient, and treat yourself with gentleness. Each moment you choose to stay with yourself rather than run away, you are building a solid foundation for lasting peace, a foundation no relationship can take away and no event can destroy. After traversing the depths of pain, letting go, forgiveness, and the ability to be alone, many begin to wonder, if one day they love again, on what foundation should that love be built, so as not to repeat old suffering, not to fall back into clinging, dependency, and losing themselves as before. The Buddha does not teach people to renounce romantic love, nor does he view love itself as the direct cause of suffering. He points instead to ignorance, attachment, and possessiveness in love as the roots that cause people to hurt one another and themselves. Therefore, love in the Buddha's view is not something to avoid, but something to be illumined by wisdom and mindfulness. In ordinary love, people easily confuse affection with possession. When we love, we want the other to belong to us, to be by our side, to prioritize us, and to meet our emotional needs. These desires, if not recognized, gradually turn love into a relationship of control and fear. The Buddha taught that everything in life is impermanent and without a fixed self. No one belongs to anyone. When we try to possess another person, we go against the nature of life, for people are not objects to be held, but flows that constantly change according to conditions. Loving without possessing does not mean a shallow or disengaged love. It means loving while respecting the other's freedom, their path, choices, and boundaries. In such love, we do not love to fill our own lacks, not to avoid loneliness, and not to find a refuge in place of ourselves. We love because we wish to share life, to learn together, and to grow together in understanding. The Buddha calls this love without grasping, loving without clinging. Love becomes a free-flowing stream, not forced, not controlled, and not carrying too much fear. A very important feature of love in the spirit of Buddhism is wholehearted presence, because much suffering in love does not come from big events, but from absence in very ordinary moments when two people are together, but not truly present for each other. The mind runs to the past, worries about the future, or is swept away by private thoughts. The Buddha teaches that presence is the most precious gift we can give to the one we love, and when we are fully present, listen deeply, and look at the other with understanding, many misunderstandings and hurts have no chance to arise. Love from the Buddha's perspective is also grounded in understanding, because without understanding, love easily becomes a source of suffering. Understanding here is not only knowing what the other person likes or dislikes, but understanding the fears, wounds, and deep desires operating within them, and at the same time, understanding oneself, knowing habitual reactions, limits, and blind spots in one's mind. With understanding, we do not demand the other change to make us happy. We learn to adjust ourselves, and when necessary, to speak our needs honestly without causing harm. The Buddha teaches that compassion and wisdom must go together, and in love, it is the same. If there is only compassion without wisdom, we can love to the point of sacrificing too much, endure too much, and make ourselves suffer. But if there is only wisdom without compassion, love becomes rigid, lacking warmth and connection. Healthy love is where compassion opens our hearts, and wisdom helps us know when to stop, when to say no, and when to protect ourselves and the other from unnecessary harm. From the Buddha's view, love is not a place to escape unhealed inner pain. If we carry old wounds into a new relationship unconsciously, we are likely to project those fears and desires onto the other, making them bear burdens that do not belong to them. Loving with mindfulness means being aware of what we carry, not using love as a temporary medicine to forget the pain, but using love as an opportunity to practice understanding, patience, and growth. The Buddha also reminds us that no relationship can guarantee lasting happiness if each person does not take responsibility for their own inner life. Love is not where we entrust our entire happiness to another, but where two people nurture the happiness that already exists within each of them together. When we enter a relationship with this attitude, we will be less fearful, less controlling, and less hurt when things do not turn out as expected, because our inner stability does not depend entirely on the presence or changes of the other person. A very important thing in love, according to Buddhist spirit, is the ability to accept impermanence. When we understand that emotions, circumstances, and people change, we will not be overly shocked or collapse when a relationship faces upheaval. Accepting impermanence does not make us love less. It helps us love more deeply and cherish each moment we have, because we know nothing is permanent, and that fragility makes the other's presence more precious. Looking back at past relationships in this light, many will realize that what hurt them was not love itself, but a lack of understanding in how they loved. Lack of understanding of themselves, of the other, and of the impermanent nature of life. The Buddha does not teach us to fear love, but to learn to love rightly, to love with mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, so that love is no longer a place that gives rise to suffering, but becomes a path that helps us understand ourselves, care more for others, and live more profoundly. If one day you love again, let that love be based on inner freedom, where you can be close without losing yourself, attached without dependency, and loving without possession. Then, No matter how long that relationship lasts, it will leave you with growth, gratitude, and peace, not the deep wounds of before. And only when we love in this way do we truly step out of the shadow of heartbreak, not by forgetting the past, but by transforming it into wisdom and compassion for the present and the future. After going through the days of brokenness, silence, and returning to yourself, there will come a natural question in your heart. Can I love again? Is this previously injured heart safe enough to open once more? Will a new love repeat old pains? That question does not require an immediate answer, because in the light of the Dharma, readiness is not a decision of the intellect, but a ripeness of the heart, when you no longer seek love as a refuge from loneliness, no longer use another to fill an inner void, and no longer enter a new relationship just to prove you are okay. Many people fall in love again too soon after heartbreak, not because they are ready, but because they fear being alone, fear facing the emptiness, and fear that without someone by their side, they will be pulled down by old pain. In that case, the new love easily becomes a temporary flotation device, keeping them afloat briefly. But when that device is no longer sturdy, they fall and often hurt more than before. The Buddha teaches that anything built on fear cannot be sustainable, and if a new love arises from the fear of loneliness or abandonment, the seeds of suffering are present from the start. Loving again with mindfulness means you do not enter a new relationship expecting the other to heal you, to make you feel complete, or to make you forget the past. No one can do that for you. The Buddha teaches that each person must light their own torch and walk, and in love as well, when you have learned to care for your inner life, to comfort yourself when sad, and to stand firmly when anxious. Then love can become sharing rather than compensation. A very important sign that you are ready to love again is when you are no longer hurried, no longer feel you must grasp love at all costs, no longer fear that missing this chance will leave you alone forever. When the mind is full enough, you can move slowly, observe, listen, and allow the relationship to develop naturally in its own rhythm, rather than forcing it to become something that reassures you. The Buddha teaches that haste is a sign of greed, while ripeness always carries ease and clarity. When you love again from a place of fullness, you will also carry less of the past to compare, no longer constantly measuring the new against the old, no longer seeking familiar sensations just to feel safe, because you have learned that each relationship is a new karmic encounter, and if you bring too many old images into it, you will not truly meet the person in front of you. The Buddha teaches that attachment to the past blinds us to the present, and loving mindfully means seeing the other with fresh eyes, not clouded by wounds not yet released. Loving again is also an opportunity to practice what you learned from past pain. Practice clear boundaries, practice listening to your own needs, and practice speaking the truth sincerely without causing harm. When you have gone through heartbreak with mindfulness, you understand that silent endurance is not love, blind sacrifice is not compassion, and losing yourself to keep a relationship never brings lasting happiness. The Buddha teaches that wisdom in love is knowing when to open and when to stop, when to be patient, and when to protect yourself. When you love again from fullness, you will also expect less, that the other always be present, always prioritize you, and always meet all your emotional needs, because you have the ability to care for those parts within yourself. This does not make love cold. On the contrary, it makes love lighter and freer, because when fear and clinging are reduced, you can love the other for who they are, not for what they give you. The Buddha teaches that true love always comes with freedom, for only in freedom can love breathe. Another important thing is that when you are ready to love again, you no longer see love as the sole center of life, no longer place the entire meaning of your life in one relationship, but view love as part of a richer life that includes work, friends, family, practice, and personal values. When love no longer bears the responsibility of making you completely happy, it becomes lighter, more durable, and less hurtful. The Buddha teaches that balance is the middle way. And in love, that balance helps us avoid extremes of dependence or coldness. Loving again also requires accepting risk, because love always involves the possibility of being hurt. But when you have understood impermanence, learned to let go, and known how to return and take refuge in yourself, you will not fear that risk as before. You know that no matter where the relationship goes, you can stand, care for yourself, and learn from the experience. The Buddha teaches that there is no guarantee of absolute safety in life, but there is relative safety when we have wisdom and mindfulness. If the thought of loving again still makes you anxious and full of doubt, allow yourself more time. Readiness cannot be forced. Continue to nurture your inner life, continue to practice presence, and continue to build a strong inner foundation, because when that foundation is strong enough, new love will come naturally, quietly, without haste, and without carrying too much fear. Loving again is not turning your back on the past, but moving forward with the understanding distilled from pain. When you can love from wholeness, from freedom, and from compassion for yourself and others, that love, whether long or short, will no longer be the cause of deep suffering, but become a beautiful part of your mindful life's journey. Then you will realize that heartbreak did not take away your capacity to love, but taught you how to love more maturely and serenely. Looking back on the whole journey, from early days of intense pain, of loss, confusion, and emptiness, to the stages of letting go, forgiveness, returning to yourself, learning to be alone, and opening a new view of love, many people begin to see that heartbreak, though once painful enough to seem insurmountable, did not destroy them as they feared. Instead, it quietly shaped them into someone different, deeper, more mature, and more self-aware. The Buddha teaches that no suffering is meaningless if we look deeply and learn from it. And when we can look back at heartbreak with equanimity, we have stepped out of the victim role into the role of one who understands. Equanimity after the breakup does not mean memories are gone, emotions are gone, or traces of the past are gone. It means those memories no longer make us contract, no longer pull us back into old cycles, and no longer define our self-worth. When the mind is at ease, we can remember without pain, speak of it without choking, and look back without blame, because we understand that everything happened according to its conditions, and there is nothing to fix in the past for the present to continue flowing. The Buddha teaches that peace is not the state when life is free of storms, but the ability to stand firm amid storms without being swept away. When heartbreak no longer collapses us, no longer makes us doubt our worth, and no longer makes us afraid of love or life, that is a clear sign that peace has begun to arise from within. That peace is not loud or showy, but very quiet, like a lake after rain, without big ripples, only the gentle movements of life continuing. For a long time, those heartbroken often believed that only when the other returned, apologized, or admitted fault would their pain close. But when they have gone deep enough on the path of mindfulness, they begin to realize that closure does not come from outside, but from a change in how they look at and relate to the past. The Buddha teaches that liberation does not lie in changing circumstances, but in the mind no longer being bound. And when we stop waiting for a different ending to an already past story, we become truly free. Equanimity also means we no longer need to prove anything, no longer have to show we are okay, strong, or recovered, and no longer compare our healing with anyone else's. Everyone has their own rhythm, pace, and way of healing, and the Buddha teaches that comparison only increases suffering because it takes us away from the present and pressures us. When we can slow down, breathe deeply, and accept ourselves as we are living close to equanimity. After a breakup, many discover they no longer love as before, no longer hurried, no longer blind, no longer placing their entire life in one relationship. And that does not mean their heart is closed. It means the heart has learned to love with wisdom. The Buddha teaches that wisdom does not make love dry, it makes love steady, because with wisdom we know what nourishes happiness and what creates suffering. when to move forward and when to stop, and we know no one can give us completeness if we do not know how to live fully with ourselves. Heartbreak also often teaches a deep lesson about impermanence, that what we thought would last forever can change, that what we clung to can dissolve, and that nothing in this life is outside the flow of change. When this lesson is absorbed into the heart, we begin to cherish what we have not, out of fear of loss, but out of understanding that each present moment is a gift. The Buddha teaches that understanding impermanence does not make us pessimistic, but makes us live more deeply, because we stop wasting time demanding certainty in an inherently uncertain world. Equanimity after a breakup is also when we can return to the simple things in life. A quiet morning, a simple meal, a slow afternoon walk, a deep breath amidst busyness, and recognizing that happiness does not lie in having or not having someone beside you, but in the ability to be fully present with what is happening. The Buddha teaches that true happiness is not conditional, and when we stop putting conditions on our happiness, we become truly free. If you listen to these last minutes and realize your pain has eased a lot compared to the beginning, that you can look back at the past with more understanding, that you have learned to take better care of yourself, know that you have come a long way, even if you have not acknowledged it. The Buddha teaches that the path of mindfulness is not measured by external achievements, but by inner transformation. And each time you do not run from pain, do not blame yourself, and do not make yourself suffer more, you are walking firmly on that path. Heartbreak does not take away your worth, does not make you less, and does not define who you are. It is just an experience, painful but real, that passed through your life to teach you lessons you might not have learned otherwise. When you can look at heartbreak as a teacher rather than a sentence, you have truly stepped out of its shadow, not by forgetting, but by understanding and transforming. And if one day you enter a new relationship, or simply continue living your life with a deeper peace, bring with you what you have learned: patience, listening, compassion, and wisdom, so you do not repeat old cycles of suffering. The Buddha teaches that the path to liberation is not running away from life, but living fully in life with an unbound heart. And when heartbreak no longer binds you, you are truly free. Let what has passed be laid down gently, without haste, without force, and continue walking with the understanding that you don't have to become someone else to be worthy of love or happiness. You only need to be yourself, present, mindful, and able to love yourself rightly. In that equanimity, you will realize that whether love comes or goes, however life changes, you still have a place to return, to a place that is steady, quiet, and real. The heart that has learned to understand, to let go, and to live peacefully amid impermanence. And if you have listened to these final moments, perhaps the pain in you is no longer as sharp as at first. Perhaps your heart still remembers, still has very gentle stirrings, but is no longer swept away by suffering. If that is happening, even slightly, know that you have come a long way on your own healing journey. Heartbreak did not take away your worth or make you inadequate. It brought you closer to yourself, so you can learn to love without losing yourself, learn to let go without blame, and learn to live with equanimity amid the natural changes of life. May you, as this video ends, gently set down what has passed. No need to rush, no need to force. Just breathe a little slower, live a bit more deeply, and trust that peace does not depend on having someone beside you, but on the ability to take refuge in your awakened heart. Before you leave, place a hand on your chest and listen to what has changed inside. Perhaps sadness remains, but it is no longer as sharp as it was, no longer so loud, no longer pulling you away as before. That, too, is healing. Remember that you are not broken because someone left. You are not less valuable because a story ended, and you are not late in life simply because your heart is learning to let go. From the Dharma's view, peace does not come from chasing someone who cannot stay. Peace comes from returning to what will never abandon you: your mindfulness, your breath, and the solid ground inside you. Right now, Don't punish yourself for still having feelings. Just breathe, soften, and let go of one more layer of clinging. If you wish, leave a comment with one word that describes how you feel right now, like gentle, heavy, lighter, learning to let go. One word is enough to help you recognize yourself, and sometimes it helps someone else see that they are not alone. Like, share, subscribe, turn on the bell to accompany Zen light wisdom in our next moments of pausing together, where we learn to love without suffering, let go without becoming cold, and return to true peace from within. Thank you for being here. Breathe more slowly, be kinder to yourself, and continue taking small steps on the path back home in your heart.